Welcome back out to the channel. My name's Kim. I'm an East Asian medical provider, and today I'm going to talk about heritage seeds. And it's time for me to start cleaning out my beds. I didn't clean them out last year because I'm kind of like that. But I wanted to talk about tomatoes and heritage seeds. And so we're going to spend some time in the soil today. For those of you who are gardeners, you already know that you can come out and you can work in the soil, and after a half hour, if you're feeling anxious, this just really relaxes you. And that's the thing about earth, is it's a great way to address anxiety. So if you're feeling anxious and you have an opportunity to play with plants, I would recommend that you do that and see what happens. So I'm going to tell you my story about tomatoes and how that got me to heritage seeds. Okay, so I grew up in rural Minnesota, and the thing about rural Minnesota is you don't have to have a green thumb to grow things there. You know, those hot summers, those hot summer nights, that black soil, you basically can be the worst gardener in the world and you're going to grow things there. So let's say learning how to garden in Minnesota didn't really give me the skill sets to be a gardener. And I love tomatoes. But you know, here's the thing, is the tomatoes in the grocery store, you notice how blah they taste? And you know, they're just not near as exciting as the tomatoes that I grew up with. So my goal was to grow tomatoes at home so that I could have that tomato experience again. After I moved out of Minnesota, you know, I tried growing tomatoes and I was completely unsuccessful. So this has taken me a number of years to figure out how to grow tomatoes. And so let me tell you, this is what I went through. So I decided that I finally needed to get raised beds. So I got raised beds and I got great dirt, and I tried to grow my tomatoes. I just put them in the soil here and tried to grow them, and it didn't work. I got really just a couple of tomatoes. And so then the next year is when I got that plastic cover and I put the tomatoes underneath that. That works. That works. So last year was the first year in like a decade that I actually got a tomato crop. So yay for me, I'm feeling super successful. But I got these tomatoes, and the one thing that I can say is they weren't flavorful. So they were early girls, and they said they were no GMO. But they were early girls, and we got a great crop, but they really just weren't much better than the tomatoes that I got in the grocery store. These guys are a nightmare to try and get rid of. I'll think that they're gone, and 2 years later they'll show up again. So, complete nightmare. Okay, so let me tell you, those flowers, it's impossible to get the roots out. You would literally have to dig them out. So I guess I'm going to have flowers in here too with my tomato plants, and they seem to like the tomato plants, so good on them. So I got early girls last year and I had a great crop, and the thing that I didn't like about early girls is that they weren't really flavorful, and the smell of tomato wasn't really robust. And I thought it was my soil. And let's be real, I got organic soil. I got a really good grade soil. And I was thinking, well, maybe I need to add more calcium this year. So I thought this year I'd add more calcium. Here's the thing. One of my clients came in and we were talking plants and that it's planting season and there's still snow up on the mountains, and here, if there's snow up on the mountains, you're not supposed to plant until the snow's gone. So we were talking about it. I was telling her that I got these early girls. I finally grew a crop of tomatoes, super proud, but the flavor wasn't there, and I was thinking that I was going to have to amend my soil more, put more crap in it to make them more flavorful. And she said it probably wasn't my soil, it was probably my seeds, and that I wanted to get heritage seeds because those were going to be flavorful. Well, even though I grew up in Minnesota, I'm like, I don't know what heritage seeds are and where would I get them? Well, near me we have a nursery called Millennium Farms, and Missy owns and operates that farm. And I really wanted to get her on camera, but she didn't want to, so I get it. And so I went over to Millennium Farms to talk to her about heritage seeds and what's so important about heritage seeds. So the thing about heritage seeds is they're at least 80 years old, and they pollinate these seeds. And the big difference with that why they keep these seeds around is because they're so flavorful. So that's the big difference with them, is these are seeds before we started doing all our hybridization of the plants, instead of letting the plants figure out what they want to be, we were figuring it out for them, and before we did GMO. So what Missy told me is that for some reason, when we started mucking around with these plants and, telling them what to do, somehow they lost all their flavor. So I asked Missy if she would help me pick out 2 super flavorful heritage seeds.
Rather than go with one of these really tall guys what happened a week and a half ago is we lost that greenhouse. So we scrambled to get all the tomatoes out of that greenhouse, which is where they were. So some of the tomatoes are still...
That would have been the storm.
Yeah, are still suffering, and we're starting to see results of that. So rather than getting one of the taller ones, I'm going to go with the shorter one.
And here's one other thing. Heritage and heirloom, they're the same thing pretty much. So, or I think they're this, she told me they're the same thing. So I'm going to go with they're the same thing. And so she helped me pick out 2. And the first one's going to be an Italian heirloom tomato plant. And then the second one is going to be a red Brandywine tomato plant. So these are going to be my 2 tomato plants for this year. There's only 2 of us in the family. Really, one little guy would be enough, but I thought I'd do 2 again this year. And the 2 was too much. Towards the end of the season, we couldn't eat them all, and I didn't quite have enough to do canning, so I'm hoping this year I will be able to do canning. And then I got the basil plant again, and I'm probably going to have to get another basil plant, and I'll go to Millennial Farms to get the basil plant. This one I ordered through the mail. They had wrapped them in plastic and sent them, and they had wrapped them so hard they had broke most of the stems. So my other plants, I don't know if they're going to make it. They probably won't. Okay, so let's plant these 2. And I'm going to plant them where they were last year. Now, here's the other thing, is these, you're supposed to be able to use the seeds again. I'm going to take these guys out. Now, it's been raining here, so the soils are really, really wet. So I'm not too worried about that. A lot of root in here. Now, I have some people tell me to tilt this, to tilt it like that, and that would help them grow better. I don't know. I did it with my early girls last year, so I'll just tilt it like that and see how it goes. And you know, being that it's raining, I really don't need any tools to put these two little plants in the ground here. I had fertilized them the other day, so when I water again, I'll fertilize them. I really like this brandywine. It's really super healthy. So I have great hopes for this little guy. Great hopes and great aspirations. So brandywine here, so I know which one this is. Italian heirloom here. There's that. We'll give him the stick. We'll get this little guy in the soil too, because tomatoes and basil love each other. So there are my tomato plants for this year. I'm going to do the same thing I did last year. Okay, so here's my tomato plants, 2 tomato plants. They're heritage seed tomato plants, and if they work, then I'm going to keep the seeds from them. I'll try growing the seeds next year, but if I can't do that, if I'm not talented enough to do that, then I'll just run over to Millennial Farms and pick up more. Now, the original reason why I had run over to Millennial Farms, I had actually gone over there to get some lavage, which is xuansheng in Chinese medicine. And xuansheng is really, really good for sore throats. And it has, from a Taoist perspective, it has some really great spiritual properties to it that help open things up. And so I wanted to get some lavage, and I'd plant it here, but you know, even though I can't do a thing with vegetables, I'm crazy effective with herbs. So I'm not going to plant it here because it would probably just take over the whole planter box. I'm going to get a separate little planter for the lavage. And if you haven't ever seen lavage before, there's a little plant. Thanks so much, you guys, for stopping by on the channel. Next time you're looking to plant your garden, think about heritage seeds. And, you know, we've done so much to our food supply, and so much of our younger generation is so incredibly sick with IBS, Crohn's, any other of the digestive issues, more so than when we were growing up, so much more so than when we were growing up. Working with Chinese nutritional therapy, I've come to realize that the biggest reason why that's happening is because of what we've done with our food supply chain. And so heritage seeds are one way that you can get back to foods that you can digest and that you were supposed to digest. Okay, thanks you guys, and until next time, I'll catch you on the other side.